Welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Today, we're going to take an in-depth look at the state of Iraq's economy and the Iraqi dinar as the country steps into the new year. The situation is complex, layered with deep-seated structural challenges, immediate political crises, and some glimmers of forward momentum. This narrative is constructed from verified and recent reporting, offering you a clear picture of where Iraq stands today. Let's begin with the most immediate crisis affecting millions of Iraqis as 2026 begins. We're talking about an unprecedented delay in salary payments for approximately 8 million state employees, pensioners, and Social Security beneficiaries who have not received their salaries for the final month of 2025.
Imagine the scale of this. In a country where the public sector is the primary employer and source of income for a huge part of the population, this delay is not just a bureaucratic hiccup. It's a source of profound social and economic distress, fueling growing discontent. The Ministry of Finance has tried to assure the public that there is no liquidity crisis and that resources are available, but these statements have done little to calm the widespread concern. This financial strain is occurring against a backdrop of severe political paralysis. The formation of a new government has hit a wall. Political forces have been unable to reach an agreement on the appointment of the country's three most powerful positions: the Speaker of Parliament, the President of the Republic, and the Prime Minister. This leaves Iraq with only a caretaker government, which by a court ruling is restricted to handling only non-postponable day-to-day matters. This political vacuum is critically important because it directly cripples the state's ability to make significant economic decisions. A caretaker government lacks the authority to pass a federal budget or introduce major new policies. In fact, it is widely expected that Iraq will not pass a federal budget for 2026 and will instead operate under a provisional 1/12 spending system, where each month's expenditure is based on 1/12 of the previous year's budget. This mechanism keeps the lights on but prevents any new strategic investment or long-term planning, essentially freezing the government's capacity to address systemic issues. Now let's shift to the currency itself, the Iraqi dinar. There is a crucial distinction to understand here. The official exchange rate, set by the Central Bank of Iraq, stands at 1,310.96 dinars to $1 as of the last day of 2025. This rate has shown minor fluctuations but has been relatively stable over the past year, weakening by only about 0.15% over the last 12 months. Trading Economics forecasts this rate to hold around 1,310 for the foreseeable future. However, this official rate is not the whole story. It exists alongside a market rate, which is what you might find in currency exchanges and reflects real-time supply and demand. This market rate has been weaker, reported at around 1,390 dinars to the dollar. The difference between these two rates highlights ongoing pressures and inefficiencies within Iraq's financial system. To help you visualize the dinar's recent performance against other major currencies, here is a summary of key exchange rates as of late December 2025. Iraqi dinar exchange rates as of 31 December 2025. US dollar USD 1,310.96 IQD, Euro EUR 1,539.15 IQD, British pound GBP 1,764.53 IQD, Japanese yen JPY 0.1195 JPY per 1 IQD, Chinese yuan CNY 0.0053 CNY per 1 IQD, Indian rupee INR 0.0686 INR per 1 IQD. Beyond these immediate political and currency matters, Iraq's economy is navigating a series of profound structural pressures that will define 2026. First and foremost is the near total dependence on oil revenue, which still accounts for over 90% of the government's income. This makes the national budget extremely vulnerable to global oil price swings, a factor entirely outside of Iraq's control. With global demand expected to cool, 2026 is unlikely to bring a major price windfall, forcing a hard look at public spending and economic diversification. Second is the crippling challenge of water scarcity. Dropping water levels in the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, driven by climate change and upstream dams in neighboring countries, are severely hurting agriculture. This threatens food security, risks inflation in food prices, and could lead to displacement from rural areas. Third, the private sector remains stifled. It struggles to compete with the massive but often unproductive public sector. High youth unemployment, with more than half the population under 25, is a ticking time bomb that requires urgent reforms to reduce bureaucracy and encourage investment and entrepreneurship. In the midst of this complex landscape, recent events illustrate the tensions at play. Parliament is moving to annul a decision by the caretaker cabinet to impose new taxes on imported hybrid and electric vehicles, arguing it exceeds the government's constitutional authority. Meanwhile, the economically vital province of Basra, which produces over 80% of Iraq's oil, has reopened a debate about transforming into a federal region. This is a major point of contention, as Baghdad fears it could lead to new disputes over the control of oil revenues.
Looking ahead, analysts have a mixed but pointed outlook for Iraq in 2026. The country is described as being at a critical economic crossroads. On one hand, consistent oil revenue and partnerships with Gulf states for reconstruction and energy projects provide a foundation. Banking reforms aimed at digitization and compliance are slowly progressing. On the other hand, deep structural weaknesses persist. Expectations for 2026 include modest GDP growth of 2.5% to 3.2%, continued high unemployment unless private sector reforms accelerate, and foreign investment that will only increase slowly if transparency and anti-corruption measures improve. The overarching theme from observers is that Iraq is caught in a reproduction of crises, where problems drag on from year to year without the fundamental reforms needed to break the cycle.
The path forward in 2026 is not about a single event or a sudden change in the dinar's value. It is a story of systemic transition. The potential for a more diversified and resilient economy exists, but realizing it depends entirely on political will. The formation of a fully empowered government is the first and most critical step. Without it, the ability to pass a real budget, implement long-term reforms, and build investor confidence remains locked. The year 2026 will test whether Iraq's political leadership can move beyond stalemate and begin addressing the foundational challenges of oil dependence, water scarcity, and job creation. The delayed salaries, the political deadlock, and the debate over Basra are not isolated issues. They are symptoms of a system in need of decisive change. The stability of the dinar and the health of the economy are directly tied to these outcomes. That is the reality on the ground as the new year begins.